Okay. In 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 9 through 15, do thy diligence to come shortly unto me, for Demas has forsaken me, having loved this present world, and is departed unto Thessalonica, Crescens to Galatia, Titus unto Dalmatia. Only Luke is with me. Take Mark and bring him with thee, for he is profitable to me for the ministry. And Tychicus have I sent to Ephesus. The cloak that I left at Troas with Carpus, when thou comest, bring with thee, and the books, but especially the parchments. Alexander the coppersmith did me much evil. The Lord reward him according to his works, of whom be thou ware also, for he has greatly withstood our words. I want to show how Paul's humble willingness to ask for help. I want you to see a need to be actively involved in serving Yeshua. What's the difference between a contribution and a commitment? Perhaps I can best explain this by a story about a hen and a turkey. The farmer took very good care of them both, so one day the hen suggested they surprise him with a good breakfast. The hen found the turkey and said, "I'll provide the eggs, you provide the turkey bacon." The turkey objected. "Wait a minute, you are only making a contribution, but you're asking me to make a commitment." Many believers are willing to contribute to Messiah's kingdom, but not many are willing to commit themselves to Messiah's kingdom. This is why Yeshua always pointed to the cost of being a disciple when he invited people to follow him. In Matthew 16, verse 24, then said Yeshua unto his disciples, if any man will come after me, let him deny himself and take up his stake and follow me. Our goal is to live faithfully for Yeshua. The greatest desire we experience should be to live a life that is pleasing to Yahweh. The Bible says that the believer's life is a race, and we are told to run so that we can win the prize. In other words, we need to give it our best shot. Here we can see some of Paul's love and affection for young Timothy, and we also sense Paul's loneliness. Paul is a man who not only desired fellowship, he is also open about expressing his desire for fellowship. In Titus 3, verse 12, when I shall send Adamas unto thee, or Tychicus, be diligent to come unto me to Nicopolis, for I have determined there to winter. So he's going to stay there for the winter. 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 4, greatly desiring to see thee, being mindful of thy tears, that I may be filled with joy. So he misses them. In 2 Timothy 4, verse 21, do thy diligence to come before winter. Eubulus greets thee, Prudence, and Linus, and Claudia, and all the brethren. We must remember, though, that even loneliness is not an excuse to be unfaithful to Messiah. Paul desired fellowship, but he didn't depend on it in order to obey Messiah. In Philippians 4, verse 11 to 13, not that I speak in respect of want, for I have learned in whatsoever state I am therewith to be content. I know both how to be abased, and I know how to abound. Everywhere and in all things I am instructed both to be full and to be hungry, both to abound and to suffer need. I can do all things through Messiah, which strengthens me. Notice some are busy loving the world, love this present world. In 2 Timothy chapter 4, verses 9 and 10. Do thy diligence to come shortly unto me, for Demas has forsaken me, having loved this present world, and is departed unto Thessalonica, Crescens to Galatia, Titus to Dalmatia. Notice the contrast between Demas and Paul. In 2 Timothy chapter 4, verse 8, Paul says, Henceforth there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, shall give me at that day, and not to me only, but unto all them also that love his appearing. Paul longed for the coming of Yeshua Messiah. Demas longed for what the world could offer him. We all know people like that. The Greek word deserted means to utterly abandon, with the idea of leaving someone in a dire situation. Demas was a fair-weather disciple who had never counted the cost of genuine commitment to Yeshua. What a disappointment Demas was. He stood with Paul in Colossians 4, verse 14. Luke, the beloved physician, and Demas greet you. And Philemon, in chapter 1, verse 24, Marcus Aristarchus, Demas, Lucas, and my fellow laborers. But now he has turned away. One of the most difficult experiences in life is when a faithful companion forsakes you at a time you really need them the most. Yeshua warned us about this also in Matthew chapter 13, verse 20 and 21. But he that receives the seed into stony places, the same is he that hears the word, and anon with joy receive it, yet has he not root in himself, but endures for a while. For when tribulation or persecution arises because of the word, by and by he is offended. The solution is for us to count the cost ahead of time. In Luke 14, verse 28 to 30, for which of you, intending to build a tower, sits not down first and counts the costs, whether he have sufficient to finish it, lest happily, after he had laid the foundation, and is not able to finish it, all that beholds it will begin to mock him, saying, this man began to build and was not able to finish. If losing your friends is too high a cost to follow Messiah, then don't follow him. If turning away from pleasures too high of a cost to follow Messiah, then don't follow him. Loving the world is much more than just a bad idea. It is a disaster to love worldly things. James chapter 4, verse 4, you adulterers and adulteresses, know you not that friendship of the world is enmity with Elohim? Whosoever therefore will be a friend of the world is the enemy of Elohim. In 1 John chapter 2, verse 15 through 17, love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If any man loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, is not of the Father, but is of the world. And the world passes away, and the lust thereof. But he that does the will of Yahweh abides forever. Every single one of us is in danger of letting the world capture our affection. In 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 17, charge them that are rich in this world, that they be not high-minded, nor trust in the uncertain riches, but in the living Elohim, who gives us richly all things to enjoy. In other words, Yahweh generously supplies us with things to enjoy when we are committed to enjoying him. In 2 Timothy 4, verse 10 to 13, for Demas has forsaken me, having loved this present world, and is departed unto Thessalonica, Crescens to Galatia, Titus to Dalmatia. Only Luke is with me. Take Mark and bring him with thee, for he is profitable to me for the ministry. And Tychicus have I sent to Ephesus. The cloak that I left at Troas with Carpus. When thou comest, bring with thee, and the books, but especially the parchments. Because some are busy serving the Lord, Tychicus I have sent to Ephesus. Mark's life is a wonderful example that our Elohim is the Elohim of a second chance. Mark went with Paul and Barnabas on their first missionary journey, but then left them at Pergia to return home. When it came time to go out on the second missionary journey, Paul did not want to bring Mark along because of the young man's previous retreat. When Barnabas insisted that Mark should accompany them, the matter was resolved by Paul's leaving for Syria and Cilicia with Silas, while Barnabas and Mark went to Cyprus. When Mark was younger and immature, Paul did not feel that he was ready for the missionary work. But now, years later, Paul was humbled enough to acknowledge that Mark had grown up. Later, the same man wrote the Gospel of Mark. Paul even makes his affection for Mark clear in the book of Colossians chapter 4, verse 10. Aristarchus, my fellow prisoner, salutes you, and Marcus, sister's son to Barnabas, touching whom you receive commandments. If he come unto you, receive him. Many of Yahweh's greatest servants failed miserably at the start of their course, but returned to finish the race in a El-honoring fashion. When David Livingstone attempted to preach his first sermon, he went blank and told the audience, "I've forgotten all that I had to say." He left the pulpit in utter shame and discouragement. But through the encouragement of Robert Moffat, he went on to be an accomplished preacher and a doctor. Yahweh provides a second chance to the man who is willing to get back on his feet and run the race set before him. If you fall, get up and start moving again. Jonah 3 verse 1 and 2. And the word of Yahweh came unto Jonah the second time, saying, Arise, go unto Nineveh, the great city, and preach unto it the preachings that I bid thee. The only mention of Christians, whose name means growing, in the Bible is 2 Timothy 4 verse 10. We know nothing more about him. This should be an encouragement to all believers. No matter how humble their position in life may be, even an errand run for the Lord will not go unnoticed or unrewarded. In 2 Timothy 4 verse 14 and 15, Alexander the coppersmith did me much evil. The Lord reward him according to his works, of whom be thou aware also, for he has greatly withstood our words. Paul's not shy about naming Alexander the coppersmith as someone who worked hard to oppose the gospel. But Paul didn't take responsibility for punishing him. Paul quotes an Old Testament passage in Romans chapter 12 verse 19. Dearly beloved, avenge not yourselves, but rather give place unto wrath, for it is written, Vengeance is mine, I will repay, says Yahweh. Notice the full context of the verse that Paul quoted, which you find in Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 35. To me belongs vengeance and recompense. Their foot shall slide in due time, for the day of their calamity is at hand, and the things that shall come upon them make haste. This Alexander was probably the same man that Paul had thrown out of the church at Ephesus. In 1 Timothy chapter 1 verse 18 through 20, This charge I commit unto thee, son Timothy, according to the prophecies which went before on thee, that thou by them might war a good warfare, holding faith and a good conscience. which some having put away concerning faith have made shipwreck, of whom is Hymenaeus and Alexander, whom I had delivered unto Satan, that they may learn not to blaspheme. If this is the same man, he probably became bitter against Paul because he exposed his carnal nature to the church. He obviously never repented. Two names among the ones that Paul listed stick out like sore thumbs. Demas and Alexander, who were both co-laborers with Paul, who forsook him. One turned and ran, the other openly opposed what Paul was teaching. Statistic tells us that there are some listening to me who will not finish the race for Messiah. Some of you might quit. Could that be you? If you have been baptized, then you made a solemn vow to follow Messiah no matter what. Please don't ever turn away from that promise, no matter how difficult following Yeshua becomes. There are many here who serve his body faithfully and sacrificially, but there may be some others here who could come alongside and lighten the load. Our goal is everybody works, nobody does all the work. Yahweh is looking for servants who are willing to make a commitment, like the turkey being the turkey bacon, and not just contributions like the hen laying the eggs. Yahweh bless.